Good evening!
Evening.
Welcome to AlmeidaIsGod.com Video Debrief, Season 7, Episode 9, the Badass Aviator Sunglasses Edition. Fuck yeah!
Yeah, I don't know. God, where do we start? That was incredible.
I'll just start off with, like, you know, the whole inspiration for tonight's theme, the Aviator Sunglasses Edition, stems from a conversation I had on MSN earlier today with Matt. Mm-hmm. I was asking him if he'd voted in the Tony Almeida fashion statement poll on the site. And he said that he had voted for Season 4, Washed Up Alcoholic Tony. and I replied that I had voted for Season 7, Badass Dark Tony. But the only thing that was missing was the Aviator sunglasses. And I really wanted to see those make an appearance. And then Matt said, well, you know, Cash, night's coming soon. Like, I don't know. And I said, there's still time. And tonight, when the Aviator sunglasses showed up...
You should have seen her freak out. Oh, my God.
I freaked out. I was just like, Aviator sunglasses!
I was like, yeah, okay, they're great. Yes, but why? Why the freak out? Now I understand.
Well, the Aviator sunglasses have definitely been... you know, a very important thing with Tony's fashion through the seasons. We had them in Season 2, we had them in Season 3. I don't think they made an appearance in Season 4.
I don't know, but probably nearly as important as the soul patch, for sure.
For sure.
Yep.
I mean, the Aviators are definitely secondary to the soul patch, but bottom line is they made a fucking appearance, and I'm fucking psyched about it.
We haven't seen the Cubs mug yet. I wonder if that would make an appearance. Probably not. He's not a desk guy tonight.
I would like it if they made an appearance.
How
or if
on
the Cubs
earth
mug made an appearance.
would that happen?
Well, I mean, you know, I don't see it, you know, as being too likely, but you just never know.
Pulls out a shard of a broken Cubs mug.
Carlos is pretty sly, you know. He might find a way to get it in there. But anyway, so I guess, you know, regarding last week's episode and the fact that we didn't really do an official video, I mean, we apologize.
It just didn't happen. It couldn't happen.
Yeah.
And of all of the episodes this season for it to not happen, probably last episode was as suitable as any.
Oh, yeah.
Or more so. We didn't really have much Tony. We didn't have any Tony.
We didn't have any Tony, and I mean, the high point of last week's episode for me, for sure, was the sort of dynamic of Chloe being at the FBI, and kind of her showing her character stuff, and, you know, there was some good stuff with Jack and
then there was
Walker.
Pierce. There was Pierce
and of course, Pierce. Yeah, I mean, how you know, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know, my mind is just too much on the Aviators, and not enough on last week.
We'll have to give a nod to Aaron, absolutely. That was really worth it, bringing Taylor's daughter into the story. That's good. I want to see what's going on there now.
Yeah.
And then, you know, bringing Taylor into the hospital. Taylor and this Taylor and that Taylor.
Yeah, all the other Taylors.
But yeah, no, okay, so a good plot advancement episode for sure. But it all came together in this week's episode.
Totally, yeah.
I think we're both really stoked.
Yeah, we really want to talk about this week. So let's just say that, like, the ship on last week has already sailed. I mean, everybody did a great job carrying things while I was away, and, you know, not really too much else to say.
No, it all starts now.
Totally.
Okay,
so moles. I would like to discuss moles.
Absolutely, for sure.
You know,
and not just one.
Not just one, but many. No, I've been I did a bit of a sort of mole retrospective. Like, you know, we had an episode postmortem, you know, submitted this week on the site by J.A. And, you know, in it she sort of discussed the issue of moles. And so I took the opportunity to kind of elaborate on moles. And, I mean, I think a lot of people kind of have been saying since the beginning, when we sort of had this, well, the Bureau's compromised and there's a conspiracy, well, you know, the whole mole thing is so tired, it's so played out, it's, you know, we don't need another mole, it's so fucking boring, blah, blah, blah. And my point is that basically, yeah, there have been a lot of moles, but where there's conspiracies, there's moles. Mm-hmm. And what I do appreciate about the moles that we've had throughout the series is that each time they present a mole, they do manage to put a little bit of a twist on it.
Yeah.
And what a twist Season 7 turns out to be.
Oh my gosh, and they're having, there's an established relationship between two moles. that they've held from the audience, which is fantastic, I think. But bringing this kind of a thing in is definitely a new twist. It's a new facet on the whole concept, and this is what we were talking about. This is where this will go. The concept of loyalty and betrayal, the kinds of relationships that can happen that are loyal in their own sphere, out of context, that are a betrayal in and of themselves, because that relationship between Sean and Erica was a betrayal, but there was also loyalty within it. It's a parallel, it's a reflection of a lot of that particular relationship, the theme of that relationship that is being explored in various pairs throughout this entire season right now, which I find really, really exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so watching this mole theme play out has been really exciting. It's got a whole bunch to say, I think.
It does, totally. Like, because first of all, I personally, like, I was really surprised by it. Like,
Yeah,
I was shocked. I absolutely did not expect to see it coming. The question we've all been asking ourselves since the season started is who's the mole, not who are the moles.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of definitely, I think, is a real payoff for this kind of little subplot we've had going on with Sean and Erica and their affair, and Janice finding out about it, and, you know, that whole thing where everyone's going, well, why is this even here? It's so boring. It's so pointless. No, it's not pointless. It's not pointless.
And which is another point that we were making earlier is how everything is so deliberate this year, and how satisfying that is. It seems to all be coming to light right now. This episode was really great at elucidating how every single thread has been deliberate. Every single character has been deliberate. Their arc, their evolution, all of the revelations that have been made to us haven't been flying by the seat of the pants. What are we going to do? How are we going to shock our audience? What's going to bring the audience for the biggest ride? Moment to moment. It's all been planned, and it feels good. It's satisfying to watch a story develop that way.
Tonight was one of those yes episodes for me, where there was like a lot of different payoffs, because I think I was wrong when I declared, I guess it was episode 8, the beginning of Act 2. I think I was wrong. I think actually the next episode will be the beginning of Act 2.
Act 2. I feel that way too.
I think
maybe there was like a sort of a semi-climax where things got resolved over the next couple of episodes, you know. So now there was kind of a little hump, and then there was another hump, and now we're at a changing point.
Like, yeah, now I've realized that actually 8 was not the beginning of a new arc. It was actually a transitional episode, as was 9, and now this is the beginning of the second act.
Yeah.
And I think in light of that, I like episodes 8 and 9 more.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as much as I bitched and whined about how there was no Tony, like the payoff tonight for the small, you know, scene and small amount of screen time he was in was so fucking huge.
Do you know how we were
not just for the Aviators, but for everything.
But the importance of the first episode, you know how we were saying, you know, if they're not going to give us Tony for now or however many episodes, when we do see him, there's going to be high impact.
Yeah, and it was.
And it was so solid, it was so important, and
but how did you know where Jack was going to be?
It's a good question.
Because Jack was just sitting there, and then Tony showed up, and he's like, what are you doing here? He had no idea that Tony was coming there. So how did Tony know where he was?
Could be that Tony knows that when his brother is done a day's work, he likes to sit on the steps
of the Washington Monument and ponder life.
And ponder life and look at the world that he's saved. I don't know. But, you know, I mean, if Tony's following up on leads or, you know, working in his own little, you know, intelligence, he's got eyeballs everywhere, and he's probably working with people who are watching Jack.
No, I liked it. It was a good payoff, because, I mean, everybody's been fucking going all paranoid. Well, no, this stuff with Tony's lead is going to be irrelevant, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. No, it's not irrelevant. No. There it is.
Yep.
You know, they didn't need to show it. All they needed was that super high-impact sunset scene on the steps of the Washington Monument.
Do you know what I love?
Where Tony comes up and sits behind Jack and has his aviators and says, you know, it's not over yet.
Isn't it wonderful how we can feel how sick Tony is about the places that he's going, that he is forced to go to do the job? You know what, it's interesting, because Jack is being challenged by Renee constantly about what kind of a place are you in that you can go to these places all the time and not have any regret and blah, 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 and do you feel, etc., etc. Jack is resolved. What we see in Tony is somebody who is forced to go to a place that is actually difficult, that he is constantly feeling every minute. And he hasn't necessarily resolved that feeling.
Yeah,
he's living within it. He knows, he understands his purpose and the necessity of it, but he's living within that agony every minute that he has to go there. When we said bye to him a couple of episodes ago, the look on his face and his understanding of where he had to turn around and walk to all by himself, again, to continue with the mission that he began, showed us just how ugly what he's dealing with is.
Totally, yeah.
And now he's coming back and showing us all of this shit that he's had to go back and revisit. You know?
That totally puts that last scene kind of with him at the end of episode 7 in a different perspective for me, because at the time I thought, well, he's conflicted because he isn't sure whether he can go through with his word, right? Like, he's just given Jack his word of what he's going to do, but Tony isn't really sure in his heart if he can go through with it. But that analysis I prefer.
Where, he has to go back to that dark place. And, there is no goodbye to that, shooting Emerson or not. Emerson's death was probably a goodbye to Michelle, but now there's dealing with himself, the dark places that he's gone.
And like coming to some kind of resolution as Jack now has. Speaking of Jack, like, I mean, we should probably talk a little bit more about the scenes with him and Renee. We'll come back again to Tony, I'm sure, but
there's more to say, yeah.
But yeah, no, like the scene between he and her in the hospital, like, I mean, obviously the scene where she pulls a gun on him in the burning car wreckage is huge and very high impact, but just the scene in the hospital just kind of, I don't know, hit me like on a higher level as far as Jack's character is concerned, because I think there's been a lot of controversy about kind of where his character is at right now. Like, you know, are what the writer's trying to say is that, you know, Jack thinks that all of the things that he has done are acceptable. I don't necessarily think he does. But at the same time, he's come to a resolution of what he's done, and he's willing to accept himself for that and stop, you know, trying to apologize to people and stop trying to justify himself to people, because he's
even
realized
to himself
he's realized he doesn't have to do that. He's done what he's done, and you know the results were what they were, and he's willing to live with that. He's made that decision, because if he wasn't, he would have killed himself a long time ago.
And he was close to it,
you know, people should stop expecting him to continue beating himself up and flagellating himself over it. You know, this is a different thing, and I'm a lot more interested, kind of like we were saying while we were watching it, in seeing him and Tony interact, because they've both been through the same things. They know what it takes. They know the pain that, you know, they have to go through. I think the biggest difference between the two of them right now and where that conflict is going to come from is that Jack has, you know, been able to swallow it and you know, live with it and continue doing what he does, whereas Tony has struggled and, you know, he's let it overcome him and he's let it consume him and, you know, push him to a place where he's dealing with it in a much different, more, I guess, maybe the term is arbitrary, destructive way.
So perhaps that's where Jack's mistrust comes at the very end, where he has to decide whether or not he's going to follow Tony into the fray once more. Is Tony in a place where he's in control and thinking rationally? Is he operating out of emotion? I think that's what Jack is struggling with right now. Does he trust? Jack places, I think, a lot of importance on his own ability to remove himself from emotion in order to know that what he's doing is necessary. That's his survival mechanism.
Rational, yeah.
Now, when he sees Tony not distancing himself from his emotion, being so dark, being so wrought, he can't trust that what Tony's doing,
that his judgment is sound.
His judgment is sound, because he deals with it in a different way, right? So ultimately he will.
But I mean, when Tony asked the question, like, if you're with me, meet me here, like, is there really even a question?
No,
like,
there is no question.
Of course there's no question. I mean, obviously Jack is with him. Like, come on.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
Come on.
I think the dread is just so deep in Jack. I think that's when feeling actually hits him, because when he sees his brother Tony in a place like this, asking for his help like this, that's when the severity of the situation hits Jack fully. He doesn't feel in control. He doesn't know what's coming next.
No, that's exactly right. You know, he walked away from the office at the FBI there, you know, thinking it was all over, that, you know, everything and I thought it was actually kind of funny because, you know, from the very beginning of the season, I expected there's a conspiracy inside Taylor's administration to drag out for a really long time, and all of a sudden they're just like, nope. You know what, like, that's resolved, now we're gonna get on to something else, and that something else is the lead that Tony happened to be following up, which is still on the same track, because it's involving Juma, and it's involving, you know, those higher above that Debaku doesn't even know about, right? So it's still related, and it's still logical, and, you know, goes from one to the next.
Now, do you think that a thread that ties the first and second act together may be this list of compromised people? Because
definitely,
it's so
it
long,
has to be,
right? It's
it
so
has
long.
to
It's such a
be.
huge list, and so the revelations of who's on that list will probably carry through as well and offer complication.
But I would wonder, though, I mean, yeah, no, I definitely think you're right. Like, and again, another thing, like, you know, kind of tying, like, Hillinger's contact, Burnett, back to Senator Mayer, I also thought was a really good move.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, it's giving this season some cohesiveness, I think, that in some ways was lacking. Like, I mean, overall, the season has been pretty cohesive, like, compared to other seasons. But, you know, I think this episode was one of those revelation episodes for me, where they started tying all kinds of different things together in ways that you didn't really expect them to. Like, especially the Sean and Erica thing. Like, you know, kind of going back to the Molly conversation from before. Like, I mean, this type of thing they never did before. Like, you know, this is definitely another new twist on the mole concept, right? You have two moles who are involved with each other. Yeah. And then I just have to say, like, Sean Hillinger is a stone cold, heartless motherfucking bastard. I mean, I seriously didn't think Hillinger had the balls. Like, I thought he was just this kind of, like, nerdy guy who's wants to make some money and, you know, whose manipulative friend got him in over his head. But hell no, man, this guy is fucking cold. He set Erica up from the very beginning to take the fall. He got her involved for he got involved in a relationship with her sexually, and brought her into, you know, the kind of conspiracy with the sole purpose of setting her up to take the fall if they should be exposed. And so massive props to you, fucking Sean Hillinger, because you just blew me away tonight. Like, you know, a lot of people have been saying, well, where are these characters going? Like, the FBI came out in a huge way tonight. Yeah. And, like, I really loved it. I mean,
and then speaking of FBI coming out with bells on, let's talk about Moss.
Yeah.
Because, like,
me and Kat are sitting there. We're like, when he's in the room with Hillinger and he's spilling all this intel to him, and me and Kat are looking at each other going, like, Larry Moss is an idiot. Like, I'm sitting there thinking, I've defended this character, and now I see that all the people who have been calling him a fucking idiot are correct. And then the next minute,
like 30 seconds
you
later,
realize that he's set Hillinger up from the beginning, and he's suspected Sean all along.
I know, as soon as the camera starts following Sean down the hallways, that's when it starts to click. Like, wait a second. There would be no camera following Sean if there weren't something waiting for him on the other side. And if there weren't anything waiting for them on this other side, you know, like, I mean, yeah, and so it started to click, and I was like, way to go, Moss, he knows about this.
Now, did Chloe actually decrypt the files, or did she just say she did to set Sean up?
Oh, that's a good point.
Like, because it looked like there was something coming up on her screen, but
no, because Moss wouldn't have reacted that way on the phone if that were the case.
Yeah, and I guess, like, Buchanan did tell the president that the list had been recovered and that they had all the names, over 100 names, so she must have really been able to recover it. Who the hell knows, but... My
theory, perhaps, is when Moss was on the phone with her and then he turns over his shoulder and he looks back at Hillinger, that's when it starts to go kick. When it starts to click. He probably had suspicion before. He had a choice then to start talking more about the intel that he's receiving or to shut up completely. Yeah. And he chose to talk more. I think that at that moment, that was a deliberate choice to send him down the path.
Well, of course, I think it was too.
Yeah, so I think that was the moment.
Yeah. I don't. Moss was expecting him to run. He was waiting for him. Right?
Yeah.
No, I was all thinking that it was going to end up being Janice who would expose Sean.
Yeah, we thought that. Yeah,
that he would kind of be in the fray for a little bit longer, and that, but really, you know, eventually she would figure it out. But I think it was a strong choice to let Larry expose him.
Well, I think so too. I think it would have been circuitous if Janice would have done it, just because the only thing she could have talked about would have been the affair. And the affair would have led to, wait a minute, what's going on? Were they involved before? Blah, blah, blah. We would have had to go through this whole big thing where they would have had to figure it out, which probably would have taken 20 minutes, right? So this way was expedient, and it helped to really cement Moss's virtuosity and the fact that he deserves this office right now.
Yeah, for sure. I know, because Moss has been taking a lot of fucking flack from people lately, and, you know, I mean, does this episode necessarily completely redeem him? Maybe not, but it's showing us something from him.
Yeah.
You know, something that I think a lot of people didn't think he had in him. So, kudos to you, Larry Moss. But no, and actually, you know, thinking about it, like, in the last couple of episodes when Hillinger's been all like, well, you know, how come the president hasn't, how come the president's saying that everybody's safe when we haven't recovered the CIP device? And, you know, coming into Moss's office and grilling him about Renee and what's going on with this and what's happening with that. You know, maybe that kind of planted a little seed in Larry's head too. Like, once, you know, when he saw Sean in that room with her and he was shot and she was dead, like, something didn't sit right with him, I don't think, from the beginning. I think he suspected Sean all along. And I think you're right. It was a deliberate choice on his part to reveal just enough. And then Chloe's call, I mean, maybe that would have happened, maybe it wouldn't have. But
and every time there was something going on that was weird, a glitch in the computer, a hiccup or something, there was always a camera shot out to the desks of the drones.
And he would look at Sean and Janice and
most
Erica.
Of the time, and many, many times, Sean would not be there. There was a lot of shots where that camera would go whoop out the window and look and look and look, and there was no Sean.
Mind you, I mean, it could be interpreted in another way too, which is that Moss did trust Hillinger up until he received Chloe's phone call and then realized from his reaction that no, this isn't right. But I would like to think that maybe Larry had a little bit of an inkling in there still somewhere from kind of the interactions they've just had over the last couple of hours, and how Sean seems to be, you know, edgy and, you know, like overly interested in you know, details and kind of pushing boundaries and that kind of thing. And, and he was definitely sweating, like when, you know, even when Moss was kind of talking to him at first, saying, oh, you're going to have to make a statement, and how's your arm, and this and that. Like, he didn't look comfortable, obviously, right?
No, yeah.
So, you know, he was a pretty good mole while he was a mole, but once he was exposed, like, he completely fell apart.
Yeah. So I've got this burning little comment I want to make about calorie.
Oh, yes. Go ahead. Go ahead on your calorie tangent.
Did anyone realize how... did you feel that great heartbeat at the end of the episode there? Where
in the final scene with Jack and Tony at sunset. Jack and Tony at sunset is my new favorite sunset ever.
Oh my gosh.
Just you know, Tony comes in, Jack's sitting there all fucking dejected on the steps of the Washington Monument.
Do you know what? I see another screensaver desktop coming up.
Tony comes, sits down, you know, the camera kind of pans out, you see them both in profile with the sun going down behind them. Holy shit. Visually
gorgeous, and then the audio was amazing because all of the music cuts out completely and it's silent except for this sickening heartbeat again. And I started wondering, now, is that the Tony theme or is that the Jack and Tony theme? And you were mentioning, you know, it's been present in other themes as well, but I don't ever remember being impacted by it quite as strongly as when Jack and Tony are together at a turning point.
Totally.
And I felt like that heartbeat, you know, obviously it's very visceral, it's very mortal, it's directly comments on life and death, and that whole theme of mortality, and Tony embodies that. He's the one that came back from the dead. He's the one that's living in that nexus right now between life and death, and all those choices and saving people's lives, going to the dark places. And I think that heartbeat is so beautifully chosen to give us that feeling, to give us that connection to death and to life. And then that connection to Tony as well.
Absolutely. I think the two scenes that I recall the most strongly with the, sort of the calorie heartbeat theme is the interrogation scene in episode 3, and then tonight.
Yeah.
You know, in the final. Well, it's not the final scene because of course we do have the pre-clock with Burnett and Senator.
And it's both of those scenes are scenes where Jack has been ticking along in Jackland, and then something goes wham from Tony, and all of a sudden everything just goes chunk and switches, where he's jolted out of his little world. And
yeah, like you see in the hospital scene with Walker. I mean, obviously Walker is extremely volatile, extremely emotional, because she's a noob, like you said. I mean, she's going through all of this, like, the really hard stuff about the job for the very first time. And it's kind of like when she asked Jack, well, you know, what if I don't want to be okay with it, or what if I don't want to live with it? And he says, then quit. That's the bottom line. Like, that is where Jack is, right? And as far as feeling that same burning, horrible, agonizing emotional pain over the deaths of civilians and collateral damage, he's past that. You know, the only thing that can really make him feel emotion now is someone who exists kind of on the same plane as him, right? And that's Almeida. Although, I mean, I don't think he was entirely unaffected by Walker, but it was kind of like when he was holding her and she's, you know, sobbing her guts out on his shoulder.
He's
you
like
know?
a Chappelle hug.
Well, he was, you know, he was just holding her, but it's like the look in his eyes is completely empty. Like, he's just completely on autopilot. He's like, I just can't even feel anything about this anymore.
Well, because there's no purpose to it. There's no use that emotion serves, and it just gets
not
in the way
for him anymore anyway, and it
No.
just gets in the way of him being who he is,
and of making decisions and of getting things done and saving lives.
I think it is a little bit different than criticisms I've made in the past, where it's like seasons 1 to 3 you see human Jack, and then seasons 4 and 5 is machine Jack. But I mean, they played with human Jack, machine Jack in season 4. They played with him in all of the seasons. I think less so in 5 and 6. But this is not machine Jack. This is post machine Jack.
This is human Jack who's come to terms with his machineness and is living in both simultaneously, which I think is brilliant.
Yes.
I think the writers, the directors have all understood where he's been, where Kiefer Sutherland has been in portraying Jack Bauer, and also where Jack Bauer has been as a character, and has merged the two in a really great way. Making comments on what has happened from a technical standpoint, from an acting standpoint, from the viewer's perspective, and from within the show itself. It all seems to be wrapping up together with a great deal of awareness on the actors' parts, on the writers' parts.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, that's what I feel.
No, I said to you while we were watching, but it feels like for the first time in a while, the character of Jack Bauer is actually in an honest place. Like, where, you know, it may not be the same kind of, like, emotional, you know, stuff we've seen from Jack early on, because too much has happened. But I feel the character is in an honest place. And that's coming through in Kiefer Sutherland's performance, because while in seasons 5 and 6, to an extent, sometimes it felt very weary, it doesn't feel weary to me at all. It feels, you know, just honest, and you know, here it is, this is it. You know?
Okay, so, you know what, I'm noticing now that season 7 can do no wrong with us. I'd like to find something that we hate. Let's talk about something that we don't like.
Well, I'm not saying it can really do no wrong.
No, I'm curious, because I personally like everything that's been happening so far.
I've been trying to, you know, basically stay on the positive side, especially for the videos. I mean, do I think overall season 7 is the best ever? Absolutely not. You know, it ranks, to me, thus far what we've seen, in about middle ground. You know, it's obviously only part over. It's only about a third over. You know, a little more than a third. And it has the potential to move up or down depending on what happens.
What I feel is that while the season itself as a whole may not have the same impact as the first 3 seasons, perhaps, every scene between Jack and Tony so far has had the same impact for me as perhaps Jack and Mina.
Yeah, like
scenes,
not in the same way, but
no,
the
but
same level. Yeah,
The
yeah,
same
absolutely,
quality,
absolutely.
density of
I agree.
writing and-
I totally agree. I completely agree. And you know, if they were gonna bring Tony back, the only way they could go is this way.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it would have been good to have him be, you know, the evil, super archetypal villain. You know, it would have just been pathetic.
Well,
Like,
and it would have been a complete betrayal of everything he is and what we've seen, and just.
and I would hope that Carlos wouldn't agree to do it.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, he's invested many years, many hours of I'm sure blood, sweat, and tears into this character, literally. You know, and I would like to think he wouldn't let anybody sell Tony out like that. But you know, I mean, at the end of the day, you got to get paid. So.
Yeah, but you got to get paid with integrity. Gosh darn it.
And I think Carlos Bernard has that. I mean, you know, like, it wasn't his fault what the writers did to him in season 5. He was just being a nice guy by backing them up in the press, you know?
For sure. Props, man.
Props, Carlos. No, but...
I think that's really most of what I have to say.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, you know, we could go on and on and on and on, but what's the point? I mean, you know, it's all about Tony for me tonight.
And I'm so excited now that we're back on track.
Yeah, big time, big
Next
time.
week is going to be big.
Great episode. I mean, I don't think it quite gets 10 out of 10 from me, but it's definitely 9.5 territory for
Well, I
sure.
think it kind of went right at the end. Like,
big time.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we were really excited. Great time tonight. And we would just like to remind you all, may Almeida and his badass aviator sunglasses be with you.